Hi everyone, this is Jim of Shiloh Kahal, and today I want to read through the prophet Joel. Before we do, I want to revisit the theme of the prophets that I identified in the overview. And if you're interested in a larger expounding of the overview of the prophets, I did a video, it's a little over an hour of video, where we're really identifying the things that I'm finding throughout the prophets that are themes of the prophets. So before we get started here, I just want to quickly call to mind the types of themes and foundational issues that we typically see in the prophets, and we'll be looking for them in the prophet of Joel, Joel's prophetic writings. So first of all, in all of the prophetic writings, there is a call to repentance, and in which case, if we will repent, then He, Yahweh, will be faithful to forgive. And those who do respond in repentance and receive His forgiveness will be, throughout all of the dealings of Israel, the remnant of Israel, or some variant of the remnant of Israel, which is a small group of people within the national Israel, the larger body of Israel, who do repent and follow Yahweh, who seek to follow His ways. And then we're looking for judgments. We're going to see the judgment of the Gentile nations, and specifically we'll be looking for things related to the day of the Lord, or day of Yahweh, which is judgment against the Gentiles, which is one of the primary themes of the prophets. But also we have judgment against Israel, which is their judgment and punishment for sin and idolatry, which is just turning away and not really caring a whole lot about either His ways or His commands, doing things their own way, much like we see the world doing today. And even the church, just simply doing things their own way. And what happens with Israel is He removes protection. So we'll be looking for references where He's removing His protection. It culminates in the destruction, death, and removal of Israel from their promised land where they are living at the time of these prophets. Survivors are removed and scattered, oftentimes called dispersed amongst the Gentiles throughout the world. And I will say, maybe I should have organized this a little bit differently, but I will just say that scattering, that dispersal includes remnant of Israel, which are the true followers and the spiritual seed of Abraham that we'll see Paul referring to. In the days of Paul and Messiah, there was still some folks living in the land. And so, the conversation would be a little bit different than it was just 70, 80, 100 years later, as all of Israel is dispersed throughout the world. And then during this time of scattering, the time that Israel is in dispersion, the 10 tribes of Israel since 722 BC, and the southern kingdom, the tribes of Judah, the two tribes in the south, since say 70 AD or 137 AD, something of that nature. And while they are in dispersion, they are constantly referred to as captives living in captivity. So we'll be looking for those themes as we read through. And then there is throughout the prophets consistent references back to restoration. Once Israel falls and fails and ends up in scattering and dispersion, there is discussion about restoration, of being gathered back into the land for a second time. And they're gathered from the four corners of the world, which is often referred to as delivering from captivity. And we'll see references to the new land, the promised land, the second time through. And we're going to be seeing references to it where the prosperity of that time in the land, the second time into the land, the second occupation, it will be better than the first occupation was, and by a lot, it seems. And then we'll see some references to eternal life. There are different ways that they'll reference being raised from the dead and living forever, and different places and references to a new spiritual body with new spiritual ability to follow Yahweh and His Torah, or His instructions. There will be references to Mount Zion and Jerusalem. We will see Mount Zion and Jerusalem as they are referenced in the first occupation, which will be the time of these prophets. These prophecies are taking place in the first occupation. But we will also see references to Mount Zion and Jerusalem as they will be in the second occupation, the second coming at the end of time, which we're approaching. And you'll see them referenced as the Kodesh Mountain and the Kodesh City. And then, of course, we're going to see references to a Messiah, a leader who will save, redeem, and deliver Yahuwah throughout. This is the hope of Israel, that the Messiah will come and save and redeem and deliver Yahuwah's chosen people. Let's take a look at the timeline here. So we're starting with Joel. This is the first of, I've already done the Deuteronomy and Leviticus books, which actually predate the United Kingdom here. In this particular timeline, we are starting at about 1050 BC, post the time of Moses, post the time of the formation of Israel and the judges, etc. This is starting that once Saul becomes king and we have a united kingdom under kings. And then we have the split after Solomon's reign with the northern kingdom to the north with the 10 tribes, and then the southern kingdom being Judah to the south with their 2 tribes. And then we have the prophets, and they're taking place during this timeline. So here we are at Joel. So when Joel begins his writing, he's the first of the prophets that we're visiting. There are some folks who don't necessarily think Joel belongs here, that it belongs somewhere further back in the timeline. But it seems to me that it's probably, as we read, you'll kind of see it's probably reasonable that it's placed here, which would also place him as the first of the writers, the prophetic writers. And let's take a look at the timeline. He's a contemporary with Elijah. So Elijah has come on the scene, and about halfway through Elijah's time in ministry, Joel appears on the scene, and Joel then predates Elisha coming on the scene. And the king in place at this time is Ahab. When Joel comes on the scene, it's Ahab. And during this period of time, we are going to have the drought that we see written of in 2 Kings. I believe it's the end of 1 Kings. We're going to be reading about the drought in the time of Ahab and in the time of Elijah, and we'll see references to that in the writings of Joel. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. The book of Joel, verse 1. The word of Yahuwah that came to Joel, the son of Pethuel. Hear this, you elders, and give ear, all you inhabitants of the land. Has this been in your days, or even in the days of your fathers? Relate it to your children, and your children to their children, and their children to the generation after them. What the gnawing locust left, the swarming locust has eaten. And what the swarming locust left, the crawling locust has eaten. And what the crawling locust left, the consuming locust has eaten. Wake up, you drunkards, and weep, and wail, all you drinkers of wine, on account of the new wine, for it has been cut off from your mouth. For a nation has come up against my land, strong and innumerable. Its teeth are the teeth of a lion, and it has the fangs of a lioness. It has laid waste my vine and splintered my fig tree. It has made it entirely bare and cast it away. Its branches became white. Wail like a maiden girded with sackcloth for the husband of her youth. The grain offering and the drink offering have been cut off from the house of Yahuwah. The Kohanim, servants of Yahuwah, have mourned. The field is ravaged, the ground has mourned, for the grain is ruined, and the new wine has dried up, the oil fails. The farmers are ashamed, the vine dressers wail over the wheat and over the barley, for the harvest of the field is destroyed. The vine has dried up, and the fig tree droops. Pomegranate, also palm, and apple tree, all the trees of the field are dried up, because the joy has dried up among the sons of men. Gird yourselves and lament, you Kohanim. Wail, you attendants of the altar. Come, lie all night in sackcloth, you attendants of my Elohim. For the grain offering and the drink offering are withheld from the house of your Elohim. Kadash, a fast. Kadash is to separate, a fast. Call an assembly. Gather the elders, all the inhabitants of the land, into the house of Yahuwah your Elohim, and cry out to Yahuwah. Alas, for the day of Yahuwah is near, and it comes as destruction from El Shaddai. Is not the food cut off from before our eyes? Let me reread that. Verse 16. Is not the food cut off before our eyes, joy and gladness from the house of our Elohim? The seed has rotted under their clods. Storehouses are laid waste, granaries are broken broken down, for the grain has withered. How the beasts moan, the herds of cattle are restless because they have no pasture. The flocks of the sheep also perish. I cry to you, Yahweh, for fire has consumed the pastures of the wilderness, and a flame has lit on fire all the trees of the field. Even the beasts of the field cry out to you, for the water streams are dried up, and fire has consumed the pastures of the wilderness. Okay, so let me just review chapter 1 here. First of all, there's a lot of references to the drought that's taking place, by all appearances, in the time of Elijah and Ahab. And part of what they're talking about up here when we were talking about the Kohanim, these are the priests, the servants of Yahweh have mourned because the grain offering's cut off. And why are all these things cut off? Well, I don't know for a fact, but I surmise from what I can read that it's cut off because there's want and scarcity in the land, and they're not able to bring things into the storehouses because there's nothing to bring. It's just all laid barren by the effects of the drought that we read in 1 Kings. And I'd also like to insert here before I move on, but the grain offering and the drink offering that have been cut off from the house of Yahweh, there was, when Jeroboam took over leadership of the northern kingdom, what they did at that time is they removed all the Levitical priests. They removed them from their role as priests, and they inserted their own priests. So really any priests in the land, the priests that Ahab called together at the time of, challenging Elijah, they were not priests of Levi. They were priests of Baal, who are the priests that Jeroboam had established way back when. So really the grain offering and the drink offering, having been cut off from the house of Israel, could actually be also a reference to the fact that the true priesthood had also been kicked out of the northern kingdoms when they started, and by that time. And that might also explain why the Kohanim, servants of Yahweh, have mourned. Now there's a reference to a nation has come up against my land, strong and innumerable. If I could go back to the timeline here. Here's Joel. If this is the time, then when is the land coming up against, or when is the nation going to be coming up against the land? Well, here, if he's talking about the nation coming against the northern kingdom, the Assyrian Empire arises, but not for another 100 years or more does it even begin to, actually more than 100 years does it begin to formulate and arise, and ultimately where Assyria comes and conquers Israel. So is he referencing this nation? Well, maybe. I will say though that there's some there are times under Ahab and under Jehoshaphat that they're also dealing with some of the other kingdoms around and some folks that had gathered. And it could be that they're talking about those as well, that never really came, while they gathered, they did not have success against Israel. So the point is, it could be those nations, but it doesn't seem like when it talks about for a nation has come up against my land, strong and innumerable, they do reference, let me see if I can find that real quick. So here in 1 Kings, in chapter 20, after the events of Elijah with Ahab and all the things that we saw happen, the stories that we know of Elijah, after that we see in chapter 20 that Ben-Hadad, the sovereign of Aram, gathered all his army, and there were 32 sovereigns with him, 32 kings with him, with horses and chariots. And he went up and besieged Shomeron and fought against it, which is in the land of Israel, the northern kingdom. And he sent messengers into the city of Ahab, sovereign of Israel, and said to him, "Thus said Ben-Hadad, your silver and your gold are mine, and your wives and children, the best are mine." And the sovereign of Israel answered and said, "As you have said, my master." Well, I'm not going to keep going into this. I'm going to go back to Joel here. Before I go back, I think it seems necessary to finish that thought, because Aram and the Ben-Hadad, the sovereign of Aram, who gathered the 32 sovereigns with him, did come up against Shomeron, where Ahab was, and besieged it and threatened him and said, "I'm going to basically have all that is yours, your silver, gold, your wives and children, etc." And the first thing that Ahab did was acquiesce to that. And then Ben-Hadad stayed overly confident, came back in and demanded more, at which time then that Ahab, the sovereign of Israel, called together the elders of the land, told them what was happening, and they advised him to not listen to him. So then Ahab began to resist Ben-Hadad, and then Ben-Hadad, who then planned to take Israel out, he's getting drunk and doing the things that they would do in the nights prior to their actual attack, by all appearances, if I'm remembering how this read correctly. But while they were drinking in the booths, here he is saying, get ready yourself. So they turned themselves against the city. But then a prophet, a Nabi, came near to Ahab and said, hey, I'm going to, have you seen this great company? See, I'm giving it to you in your hand today. So this great nation that came against him, maybe of Joel, this could be it. Great nation that's coming against Israel. They didn't succeed because Yahuwah stepped up to help Israel. I'm giving them into your hand, and you shall know that I am Yahuwah. And Ahab said, by who? And then he said, the young rulers. So basically a small group of people went out, and I won't go into great detail here because that's not the point of this video, but they ended up, that small group of people, routing this entire army, who then left, but then said they were going to come back. Here's where the young rulers went out. The young rulers went out and against the army, and a army that followed them, and each one smote his man. So the Arameans fled, and Ben-Hadad escaped on a horse with horsemen. But later they were going to come back. The sovereign of Israel went out, etc., etc. But the Nabi came to the sovereign of Israel, said, go, strengthen yourself, and know and see what you should do. For at the turn of the year, the sovereign of Aram is coming up against you. So he's going to be coming back. And the servants and sovereign of Aram said to him, their mighty ones are greater, which is, they're saying mighty ones, but it's Yahuwah, are greater than our mighty ones of the hills. Okay, no, I'm sorry. Their mighty ones are mighty ones of the hills. So they're just misreferencing. Anyway, that's not the point either. But let us fight against them in the plain. Okay, so they came up with their idea to fight against Israel. But at the end of the day, they get smited this time when they come up against Israel either. Israel was mustered. So the point of finishing this thought is that while this vast grouping of people, the 32 armies, did gather against Israel, they did not succeed against Israel. So, is it the nation that comes up against Israel, spoken of in Joel? Maybe, but this nation did not have success against Israel like Assyria ultimately did, and then Babylon ultimately did. So my point in going back to 1 Kings chapter 20 was just to say that when we relate to this nation coming against my land, strong and innumerable, is it Aram, Ben-Hadad of Aram? Maybe. And I won't keep going into this because I really don't know that anybody knows for sure what nation Joel might be referencing here, because we have, after Aram, we're going to have Assyria, and then we're going to have, Babylon rise up, and we're going to have end times gatherings, etc. So we don't really know for sure what nation Joel would be referencing here. Let me also go back to verse 4, where it's referencing the gnawing locust, and then the swarming locust, and then the crawling locust, and then the consuming locust. Well, I couldn't find if there were locusts that were part of the drought in the times of Ahab and Joel and Elijah. I didn't see them. But when we look at the curses and in the promises and in the prophecies of Moses, that if you do not follow my Torah and these following things will curse you, well, we see language of the locust eating and consuming. So is this some sort of reference to their disobedience and what they can expect as they are moving into the curse? Maybe, because I don't find a literal swarming of the locust that it's referencing here. I'd like to also add, before I move on from here, that I also recognize that it is possible that in the midst of the prophet Joel here, he is referencing what we do find in Revelation, and that this would be end time, that the gnawing locust that comes, the various locusts, the gnawing, swarming, crawling, and consuming locusts that come, And the nation that comes up against the land could actually be the nation or the legions of locusts that come out of the abyss that are led by Abaddon in the end times. Because, first of all, they are referenced as locusts. And in chapter 9 of Revelation, verse 8, it also describes, in one of the descriptions of the locusts, in verse 8 it reads, they had hair like that of women and teeth like those of lions. The fact that we're referencing these locusts that I find no other reference for, and I see a reference to them, this army coming up with teeth like the teeth of a lion, and all of this is very similar to that of what we find in Revelation. That's also a possibility that it's not the normal natural locust that might have come upon the lands of Israel, but this might be that supernatural locust that come up in the end times, and that this would be an inserted prophecy, basically referencing the end times. Okay, so let's go to chapter 2. I really don't think there's anything else to discuss here. Well, okay, so here's a reference. For the day of Yahuwah is near. So here I believe it would be the first reference we have to the day of Yahuwah, or day of the Lord in English, most English translations. And it comes, alas, for the day of Yahuwah is near, and it comes as destruction from El Shaddai. Destruction of who? Well, I think we're going to find in other places there might be some times when Yahuwah is meting out judgment upon Israel that you would consider that a day of the Lord. But the day of Yahuwah is near, the one that he's referencing as destruction from El Shaddai, we're going to see it mentioned many times in the prophets. And I think it's pretty clear that we're talking about that final day of Yahuwah where he literally comes back to deal with the Gentile nations of the earth through the person of Yahushua. Okay, let's go to chapter 2. Blow a ram's horn in Zion and sound an alarm in my Kodesh mountain, in my holy mountain. That's what Kodesh means, separate, holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the earth tremble, for the day of Yahuwah is coming, for it is near. A day of darkness and of gloom, a day of clouds, dense clouds like the morning clouds spread over the mountains. A people, many and strong, the like of whom has never been, nor shall there ever be again after them to the years of many generations. Ahead of them a fire has consumed, and behind them a flame burns. Before them the land is like the Garden of Eden, and behind them a desert waste. And from there is no escape. And from them there is no escape. Their appearance is like the appearance of horses, and they run like steeds. As the noise of chariots they leap over the mountaintops, and as the noise of a flaming fire consuming stubble, as a mighty people placed in battle array. Before them peoples are in anguish, all faces become flushed. They run like mighty men, they climb the wall like men of battle. Every one goes on his way, and they do not break ranks, and they do not press one another. Every one goes in his path. They fall among the weapons, but they do not stop. They rush on the city, they run on the wall. They climb into houses, they enter at the windows like a thief. The earth shall tremble before them, and the Shemayim, or the heavens, shall shake. Sun and moon shall be darkened, and the skies withdraw their brightness. And Yahuwah shall give forth his voice before his army, for his camp is very great. For mighty is the doer of his word. For the day of Yahuwah is great and very awesome, and who can bear it? Yet even now, declares Yahuwah, turn to me with all your heart, and with fasting, and with weeping, and with mourning, and tear your heart and not your garments, and turn back to Yahuwah your Elohim, for he shows favor and is compassionate, patient, and of great kindness, and he shall relent concerning the evil. Who knows, he might turn and relent, and leave a barakah, which is a blessing, behind him, a grain offering and a drink offering for Yahuwah your Elohim. Blow a ram's horn in Zion, Kadash a feast, call an assembly, gather the people, Kadash the assembly, assemble the elders, gather the children and those that nurse on breast. Let a bridegroom come out from his room, and a bride from her dressing room. Let the Kohanim, servants of Yahuwah, weep between the porch and the altar, and let them say, spare your people, O Yahuwah, and do not give your inheritance to reproach for the Gentiles to rule over them. Why should they say among the peoples, where is their Elohim? Let Yahuwah be jealous for his land and spare his people. And let Yahuwah answer and say to his people, see, I am sending you the grain and the new wine and the oil, and you shall be satisfied with them. And no longer do I make you a reproach among the Gentiles. And the northerner I shall remove far from you, and drive him away into a dry and deserted land, with his face toward the eastern sea, and his rear toward the western sea. And his stench shall come up, and his smell rise, for he has done greatness. Do not fear, O land. Be glad and rejoice, for Yahuwah has done greatness. Do not fear, you beasts of the field, for the pastures of the wilderness shall spring forth, and the tree shall bear its fruit. A fig tree and the vine shall yield its strength. And you children of Zion, be glad and rejoice in Yahuwah your Elohim, for he shall give you the teacher of righteousness, and cause the rain to come down for you, the former rain and the latter rain as before, and the threshing floor shall be filled with grain, and the vats shall overflow with new wine and oil. Then I shall repay you the years that the swarming locust has eaten, and the crawling locust, and the consuming locust, and the gnawing locust, my great army which I sent among you. Then you shall eat and be satisfied, and shall praise the name of Yahuwah your Elohim, who has done with you so wondrously. And my people shall never be put to shame. And you shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am Yahuwah your Elohim, and there is no one else. And my people shall never be put to shame. And after this it shall be that I pour out my Ruah on all flesh. Ruah is spirit. And your sons and your daughters shall nabah, which is prophesy, and your old men dream dreams, and your young men see visions. And on the male servants and on the female servants I shall pour out my Ruah in those days. And I shall give signs in the Shemaim and upon the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. And the sun is turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahuwah. And it shall be that everyone who calls on the name of Yahuwah shall be delivered. From Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be an escape, as Yahuwah has said, and among the remnant whom Yahuwah calls. Okay, what a big chapter. It's so full. Let's just go back to the beginning and start breaking it apart. First, we're going to blow a ram's horn in Zion, sound an alarm in my Kodesh mountain. Well, is the Kodesh mountain Mount Zion of the days of the first occupation, or is this an alarm in the days of the second occupation when we have the new Jerusalem and the new Mount Zion? I don't really know. But let the inhabitants of the earth tremble, for the day of Yahuwah is coming, for it is near. Well, this gives us a little bit of a time indicator, because we're going to see over and over again that the timing of this day of Yahuwah coming is end times. It's at the end. It's before and around the time of the regathering together, which has not occurred yet. So it isn't likely that this blowing the ram's horn in Zion and sounding the alarm in my Kodesh mountain would have been for their time. It's really for the end time. And it's probably related to what's going to be happening as we see the horns going off and the ram's horn and the trumpets being blown at the gathering of folks. It's probably all related to that. A day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and dense clouds. Well, we're going to see it referenced later in the chapter, but we're going to see it referenced in Isaiah and in other places. We're going to see Yahushua referred to it, and we're going to see Revelation refer to this day of Yahuwah being a day of darkness and gloom, clouds. And I think we'll see some more on that as we go. And then we see a reference to a people, many and strong, the like of whom has never been, nor shall there ever be again after them, to the years of many generations. Ahead of them a fire is consumed, and behind them a flame burns. Before them the land is like a garden of Eden, and behind them a desert waste, and from them there is no escape. Their appearance is like the appearance of horses. So let me just stop here before I finish, because this is often referred to in church circles and in lots of circles as Joel's army, because we see this army described in this prophecy of Joel. Well, when I was young in the faith and listening to most of the prophetic teachings that I had at the time, we understood this to be the resurrected church. You know, we had songs that we sang, blow a trumpet in Zion, Zion, sound an alarm in the holy mountain. And it's about the church as the army of Yahweh. Then we have a song, I remember, what was Phil Driscoll sang a song. I can't remember what the name of the song was, but he was singing the song about I'll be riding with him, talking about Revelation. I believe it's I think it's 20. I'll look it up here in just a second to confirm it. But talking about how I'm going to be riding with him as though he was going to be part of this army coming back to earth with Yahushua. And I don't know what he thought he was going to do in that song, but if he was part of that army, when he got here, he'd be meting out judgment, because that's the time when Yahushua shows up. His white linen cloths are going to be filled with blood. I mean, they're just going to be the color of blood because of all the blood that he's going to shed when he gets there. So if the church is the army of people that is coming back, and is this Joel's army, as I've heard taught so prevalently in the church in my early days of the church, well, okay, then they're coming back to help judge and to do other things. But I think there might be some better explanations for who this army would be. There is a reference, and I'll go there in a second. We'll go touch on them when I get done explaining them. There's a reference to an army coming up out of the abyss, going to be led by Abaddon, or I can't think of his name, Apollyon. So they're going to have a leader. They're going to be coming out of the pit, and they're going to be coming up, and they're going to have as their leader Apollyon, which most folks who are teaching this understand to be Satan, the devil. So they'll be coming up out of the pit and responding to their leader Apollyon, where this army seems to be responding to Yahushua as their leader. So I really don't think it can be the armies of the abyss. I don't think so. What I think it most likely is, in everything I can find in Scripture, is there is a reference to Yahushua coming back on the when he comes back riding his white horse, and he's going to bring the armies of the Shemaim, or the armies of heaven, with him. Let me take a moment here to go and visit those passages just to give reference. So let me just start here with some of the references to the day of the Lord elsewhere that probably are a little better, and well, actually it's probably pretty well known in Joel too, but how it relates to what we read in the new writings, because what we're seeing described in Joel is similar to what we see in Matthew 24 in his account on the Olivet, in his Olivet discourse that we'll see in Matthew and Mark and Luke. Well, I'm just going to read from Matthew because it's the one that we most commonly do. And starting in verse 29 of chapter 24, it reads like this: "And immediately after the distress of those days, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give its light, and the stars shall fall from the Shemaim, or heaven, and the powers of Shemaim shall be shaken." So this language is similar to the language we're seeing in Joel, and that we're going to see in Isaiah as well. "And then the sign of the Ben of Adam, which is the son of Adam, shall appear in the Shemaim in the heavens, and all the tribes of the earth shall mourn, and they shall see the Ben of Adam, or the son of Adam, coming on the clouds of the Shemaim with power and much esteem," which is usually rendered glory, but it could be esteem, but it's really his greatness, more or less. "And he shall send his messengers with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together the chosen ones from the four winds, from one end of the Shemaim to the other." Okay, so this is a reference of him coming back and utilizing his angels during this period of time. And during that sign of his coming, we're going to see signs in the sun, moon, and stars throughout that whole time. Where else do we see a reference to that? Well, if we go to Revelation chapter 6, and let me just get there real quick. Let me see if I can get there by doing this. Chapter 6, and "When he opened the sixth seal and saw a great earthquake came to be, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of the Shemaim fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its unripe figs, being shaken by a strong wind. And the Shemaim departed like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place." So clearly, big signs in the heavens, big signs all over the place. It's going to be, and it's likened to figs. I think in Joel, didn't we see it referenced, figs being referenced there also? I think so, but And then we go on to say in verse 15 that the sovereigns of the earth and the great ones and the rich ones and the commanders and the mighty and every slave and every free one hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountain and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him sitting on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. Because the great day of his wrath is come, and who is able to stand? And this great day of his wrath, this is the day of Yahuwah. In fact, if we go all the way back to, let me get to Revelation 1 here, when he says, actually, give me a second. And let me go to chapter 1, verse 10 of Revelation, where he's saying in the Hallelujah scriptures, what I believe to be the correct rendition and rendering of the Greek here is that I came to be in the Ruah, or Spirit, on the day of Yahuwah. A lot of our English scriptures are reading this like the Lord's Day. They're translating this as Lord's Day, and then the church has taught us to think of the Lord's Day to be the first day of the week or Sunday. So he wasn't saying, in that context, it would be like saying, I came to be in the Spirit on the first day of the week, or I came to be in the Spirit on Sunday. But what he really wrote was, I came to be in the Spirit on the day of Yahuwah, the day of his great wrath. So this reference in chapter 6 we just had was a reference to this great day of Yahuwah that we just saw in Joel also. Okay, and then with respect to the army of Joel that we see referenced, let's go to Revelation 9, where we're going to see, for the folks who hold to the idea that this army of Joel are the creatures that come up out of the abyss and serve Apollyon. Here's the passage that they're referencing here, and it's Revelation chapter 9. And the fifth messenger sounded, and I saw a star from the Shemayim, or star from heaven, which had fallen to the earth, and the key to the pit of the deep was given to it. And he opened the pit of the deep, and smoke went up out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun was darkened, and also the air, because of the smoke of the pit. And out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and authority was given them as scorpions of the earth, as the scorpions of the earth possess authority. And it was said to them that they shall not harm the grass of the earth or anything green or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of Yahuwah upon their foreheads. And it was given to them that they should not kill them, but to torture them for 5 months, and their torture was like the torture of a scorpion when it stings a man. And in those days men shall seek death and shall not find it, and they shall long to die, but death shall flee from them. And the locusts looked like horses prepared for battle on their heads, and on their heads were crowns like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men, and they had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth, and they had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots of many horses running into battle. And they have tails like scorpions and stings, and in their tails is their authority to harm men 5 months. And they have over them a sovereign, the messenger of the pit of the deep, whose name in Hebrew, which is Hebrew, is Abaddon, but in Yahwanite or Greek, he has the name Apollyon. Okay, so Abaddon and Apollyon is usually thought of in reference to, some of them think the Nimrod is Apollyon. And maybe all of these things, but no matter what, they all seem to be related to the dark side, either Satan or Satan's, cohorts and that kind of thing. So this army that's answering to them then would be his army. So these locusts and all of these things that are attacking and that come up out of this pit and then go and harm men, and they have the authority to attack everybody who hasn't got the seal of Yahuwah upon their forehead. So earlier, we'll see that the 44,000 and maybe some others are going to receive the seal of Yahuwah on their forehead. And basically they're saying that Satan has no authority over these guys either, cannot harm these guys. So this is a potential candidate for the army of Joel. But the reason that I say it, for me, probably not, it's because their leader is the sovereign, Abaddon. So they're sovereign. Their leader is Abaddon. Now let me move off to the reference to Yahushua and his armies of heaven. Okay, so here we are in Revelation chapter 19, and this is right after the wedding supper of the Lamb. And here we start in verse 11 of chapter 19. And I saw the Shemaim, which is the heaven, open, and there was a white horse. And he who sat on him was called Trustworthy and True. And in righteousness he judges and fights. And his eyes were like a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, having a name that has been written, at which no one had perceived except himself. And having been dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Yahweh. So I don't think anybody questions that this is our Messiah. This is Yahushua. But then we go on to say, and the armies in the Shemaim, dressed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. So this would be, I know, as I was mentioning earlier, in the teaching of the church related to these events. This is where they're thinking that the church is this group of the army. The church is the army of the Shemaim dressed in fine linen, probably because they think of the church being dressed in fine linen, which is true, it is. But this is whoever this army in heaven is also dressed in white and clean and linen. In fine linen, white and clean. Okay, so there might be cause for somebody to think, well, that's us then, dressed in white linen. That's the raptured, the resurrected. And maybe you could start from there, but they followed him on white horses, and out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, and with it he should smite the nations, and he shall shepherd them with a rod of iron, and he treads the winepress and the fierceness and the wrath of El Shaddai. And on his robe and on his banner he has a name written, Sovereign of Sovereigns, and Adon, or Master of Masters. And I saw one messenger standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the birds. Okay, so what I would say, though, is rather than this being the church, because I don't think the church, having just gone up into the Shemaim to have the wedding supper of the Lamb, is going to turn right back around and come back with Yahushua to mete out the justice that's going to end up causing his robe to be, trustworthy and true, having a name. I don't think they're going to be following him, because when he comes back after this wedding supper of the Lamb, I think this is when he comes down to the earth, and he's going to be dressed in a robe dipped in blood. And we're going to read in I think it's Zechariah. We're also going to be reading where when he comes down back to the earth and he begins to mete out justice to the Gentile nations of the world, that he's going to have blood on his robe. So with that, I don't think that seems reasonable, that the church is going to be the armies of the Shemaim who are following Yahushua in battle, dressed in fine white linen and clean. Just to add to that, when we go back to Matthew 24 and the references in the Olivet Discourse, when he's talking about when he comes on the clouds in those days, in power and great esteem, great glory, great greatness, he's going to be bringing the angels along with them. So that's why I think it likely to be that the angels are the armies in the Shemaim. Let's go back to Joel now. Okay, let me interject here too. I realized in Joel 1, verse 4, when we were talking about the gnawing locusts and the various locusts and a nation that comes upon the land that have the teeth of the lion and that have the fangs of a lioness, I know that I said this could possibly be the army of the locusts from the abyss out of Revelation 9. But when we get to this second army down here in verse 2, when we have this people, many and strong, the like of whom has never been, well, I don't think that one of the if this one up here is the locust army, remember that the locust army is led by Abaddon, Nimrod, cohort of Satan, whatever it is, it's Satan through one of either Satan himself, which I don't think so. I think it would be through one of his minions, like a Nimrod or something of that nature. But if this is them, this army, if that's what this is, they are led by Abaddon. And when we get to this army down here, this people, many and strong, whoever this is led by, we're going to see in a few moments, you're going to see it's led by Yahuwah. So I don't think this army and the first army nation up here that they're not calling them an army, but it almost sounds like an army. Nations come up and having teeth of a lion, etc., and the locust almost sounds like an army. If this is Revelation and the locust, if that's what that literally is referencing, they would be led by Abaddon, and down here, this army of the people down here are led by Yahuwah. And I'll also make one more comment before I leave. I noticed that when it references the restoration of the years that the locusts have eaten, in Revelation it says that they ravaged for 5 months and not necessarily years. That would be one reason that we might think this is not the locust of Revelation, and this is not the nation of Revelation, but a nation that literally, a natural nation that comes up that is also described as having the teeth of a lion, etc. Okay, so with some of that in the background, let's go back and revisit this again. So blow a ram's horn in Zion and sound an alarm on my Kodesh or holy mountain, for the day of Yahuwah is coming, for it is near. Now, I don't really know what to do with near, because it seems like that's thousands of years away. And what would he mean by near? Whatever it is, it couldn't have been soon. It couldn't have been soon because it didn't happen soon. Not the one that we saw described in Revelation. Day of darkness and gloom, things that we just saw described in Revelation and in the Olivet Discourse. Ahead of them a fire is consumed, behind them a flame burns. Ahead of them it's like the Garden of Eden, and behind them it's a desert waste. So as this army moves through where they're conquering, it's going to be good in front of them and destruction behind them. And their appearance is like the appearance of horses, and they run like steeds. And then we're going to see, just descriptions of how they might move with wonderful formation, as just a wonderful in unison type of army, and how they're, the people before them are powerless and in anguish, just like the kings of the earth hiding themselves and falling on the grounds and saying, "Hide us, for the day of the day of the Lord has basically come. For he who sits on the throne and the Lamb, and their wrath has come, and who can withstand it?" Well, okay, so they're in anguish as they ponder that, their future and what's getting ready to befall them. And this is the army again. They run like mighty men, climb the wall like men of battle. All these tremendous, ideas of this army that is so well geared, well disciplined. But then here we come back to the earth trembling before them, and the Shemaim shall shake. That what we just read in the Olivet Discourse and in Revelation, where the Shemaim is all worked up, and we have the signs in the sun and moon and star being darkened, the stars withdrawing their brightness, all in the day of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah shall give forth his voice before his army. And this is why I'm pretty convinced it can't be the abyss locust, because Yahuwah is giving his voice before his army, and his camp is very great, for mighty is a doer of his word. So I don't think it's the army of the pit following the Apollyon. I think it's got to be the armies of heaven following Yahushua. That's my take on it. For the day of Yahuwah is great and very awesome, and who can bear it? Remember Revelation 6. For the day of the wrath of the one who sits on the throne and the Lamb, their wrath has come, and who can stand it? Well, similar language. Yet even now, okay, and so what we were reading there would have been the themes of this judgment, the judgment of the Gentile nations that we just read in the day of Yahuwah. But what we're getting ready to see now is the typical call to repentance. And if you will repent, then you will receive from him. You will receive forgiveness and grace. So yet even now, declares Yahuwah, turn to me with your heart, and with fasting, with weeping, and with mourning, and tear your heart, not your garments. And turn back to Yahuwah your Elohim, for he shows favor and is compassionate, patient, and of great kindness, and he shall relent concerning evil. So there's his grace that we... his call to repentance, and then grace, those who will receive. And those who do repent and receive his mercy, his grace, will become, they are the remnant of Israel that we'll see referenced here in just a few moments. Yeah, here's a reference to Yahweh. There's an inheritance promised to Israel. And, while they are in judgment, while Israel is in judgment, the Gentiles, nations of the world, are in control of them, and they are receiving and taking, and they appear to be getting and taking and just taking from Israel their promises, the inheritance. And really, even in this passage, this is a call from the Kohanim saying to Yahweh, spare your people, Yahweh, and do not give your inheritance, which is Israel, to reproach for the Gentiles to rule over them. So Yahweh, don't give your people to the Gentiles to rule over them. Why should they say among the Gentiles, where is their Elohim? Okay, so let Yahweh be jealous for his land and spare his people. Well, yeah, that's what the Kohanim, the priests, are calling for, and that's what's going to ultimately happen, is that he is going to be jealous, and he is going to protect his land and spare his people and bring his people out, the remnant of Israel. And let Yahweh answer and say to his people, see, I am sending you the grain and the new wine, and you shall be satisfied by them, and no longer do I make you a reproach amongst the Gentiles. This is the promise of the restoration, and this is the promise when they're called into the land. When they're called into the land, and they get that restoration, that the restoration and prosperity of the land will be better than the original time in the land. And the northerner, who will be the Gentiles from the north, and that might even be Gog. I don't really know. Actually, I don't think it could be Gog because of the timing of it. But still, we have conquerors and Gentiles to the north who are, that he's talking about. He's going to remove, etc. And do not fear, O land, and be glad and rejoice, for Yahweh has done greatness. When it's all said and done, that's what everybody will be saying. Yahweh has done greatness. Do not fear, you beasts of the field, for the pastures of the wilderness shall spring forth. This is the resplendence of that new time, that new land, that second promised land, and how it's going to be, wonderful. Here's the fig tree and the vine shall yielding their truth. And you children of Zion, and who is this reference to the children of Zion? This is the children of promise. This is the remnant of Israel. This is one of those times when they're referencing that grouping of people who are obedient and repentant as children of Zion, rather than the remnant of Israel. Be glad and rejoice in Yahweh your Elohim, for he shall give you the teacher of righteousness. Well, everybody knows the teacher of righteousness is a reference to Messiah. And that is part of the promise. When the second time comes, our leader will be the great shepherd, the Messiah, the teacher of righteousness. And so to the people of the children of Zion, the people of Elohim, the Messiah shall be given, the teacher of righteousness, who will cause rain to come down to you in the former rain and the latter rain as before. And the threshing floor shall be filled with grain, and the vats shall overflow with new wine and new oil. So we're going to have leadership by the teacher of righteousness in the land, in the New Jerusalem, and we're going to have abundance and wonderful things, the restoration of Israel. Then I shall repay you for the years that the swarming locust has eaten. Well, potentially, if we go back to, Revelation 9, when there's reference to those swarming locusts coming up out of land, maybe that's what this is. Really, maybe that's part of what this is, because after that would be the fifth trumpet. When I think about it, that is the locust coming up out of the land, out of the pit, and maybe that is a reference. It's at that time in the second coming when we're going to see everything restored, that he's going to be repaid for the years the locust and the swarming locust has eaten. I really don't know if this is a reference to the locust coming up out of that pit or not, or just reference to the result of disobedience and the lack of following Torah and the things, and receiving the curse for unrepentant Israel. Don't really know, but I'll interject again here just to reaffirm what I said just moments ago. While we see this, this promise when Israel is restored in the land for the second time, and Israel is being repaid for the years that the swarming locust, the crawling locust, the consuming locust, and the gnawing locust, and then he calls them my great army, which I sent among you. So while this could be, as I referenced before, potentially, and I think I just said a moment ago, that this has the potential to be that Revelation army of locusts for some of the reasons that I've shared. But the fact, two things about this. First of all, it's the years that the locusts have eaten. And in Revelation, as I mentioned earlier, it was only 5 months that they were allowed to work on things. So this seems to be referencing something other than that army of Revelation, that the horde of locusts that come up out of the abyss has that potential. Plus, it's the great army which I sent among you. So if these locusts belonged to the abyss, then their leader would have been Abaddon and not Yahuwah. And I suppose, as in other cases, we could see that even though it's the army of Abaddon, Yahuwah could take credit for having sent them amongst Israel. I don't really know, but just more food for thought as we try to evaluate this. But I will say that it's going to be hard to really, I don't think any of us are going to know for sure who these locusts are with the information I have found or can find so far. But then you shall eat and be satisfied, and shall praise the name of Yahweh your Elohim who has done with you so wondrously. So this is a time of the second coming. This is the time of the regathering. And this is the promise of, this is the covenant of peace reference here. And my people shall never be put to shame. This is the, maybe I'm going a little too far to say that this is the covenant of peace. But still, my people shall never be put to shame. Once the regathering takes place and they are regathered into the land, they shall not be placed to shame again. It's over. It's no more. And you shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and I am Yahweh your Elohim, and there's nobody else. And my people shall never be put to shame. There he is again. And it shall be, and after this it shall be, that after I pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters and your Nabah, your old men dream dreams, and your young men see visions. And all the male servants, and on the female servants I shall pour out my Ruah in those days. Well, now that's kind of interesting, because we know that Peter in the early chapters of the Acts references this prophecy from Joel and was saying that they were seeing this take place in the midst of their days. Well, maybe it has dual meaning. Maybe I really don't know for sure. I mean, I'm not going to argue with Peter. How can I argue with Peter? But it's a little bit difficult to pull this into the time of the first coming, when Yahushua came the first time, in the time of Peter, and that all of this references the time that has been since. Because even though in his early days we had all of this taking place, the pouring out. I mean, if you could take what happened to Peter and the early apostles, and if you could hold that together, yeah, it would make sense, where your sons and daughters would be prophesying, and your old men dreaming dreams, and your young men seeing visions, and the Spirit being poured out on the male servants. Well, if it had continued, but we know that within a few hundred years, so many problems set in on the church. And so we never really saw a fulfillment. Today, are we seeing, I know that in the charismatic movements, we tried to build this. This was a mantra, because I was part of that charismatic movement back in the 80s and 90s. We were trying to embrace this prophecy. We were trying to prophesy. We were trying to dream dreams and journaling and doing all those things and trying to embrace it. And we could kind of easily envision it in those days that, the more charismatic we got, the more led by the Spirit, the things that we were embracing that we could see related to these supernatural things. Well, you could kind of make a case for it, but that has waned. And we've had lots of times prior to that it had waned. It's waned since. And so really, are we seeing, can this really be a full fulfillment of this prophecy? Because if so, the sons and daughters, they're no longer prophesying. We don't see, not in mass for sure. It's hard to know where to go and find somebody who's really prophesying in truth, and dreaming dreams and speaking them, as the mouthpiece of Yahuwah. Is hard to find. So I guess what I'm really saying, and I'm belaboring it and I should stop, is I know we've got Peter referencing this is related to the early days of the assemblies, of the kahal, of the ecclesia, as the church is gathering and the believers are forming. the followers of Yahushua, and thinking that we're all going to have all of these supernatural things following us. And it did follow them for a while, but it didn't stay that way through the centuries and the millennia now. So I really think that the final fulfillment of this, while it may have started there, the real final fulfillment of this will be taking place when we are seeing all of this take place at the second gathering, the second time in the land, the gathering in the resurrection of Israel, and the reconstitution of the remnant of Israel. And here's more reference to the signs of the day of Yahuwah. And I shall give signs in the Shemayim and upon the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. The sun's turned to darkness, the moon into blood, before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord, as we saw referenced in the Olivet Discourse and in Revelation chapter 6. And it shall be, again, here's another promise of deliverance. This is the Redeemer, the promise of deliverance for those who will repent and call upon Yahuwah. Those who call upon his name shall be delivered. For on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be an escape, as Yahuwah has said, and among the remnant whom Yahuwah calls. So here's the remnant of Israel, the children of Israel, who are responding to Yahuwah as Yahuwah calls out to them. And for on Mount Zion and on Jerusalem there shall be an escape. So in my opinion, this is a reference to that Mount Zion that's currently in the heavenlies that is coming to the earth. Those who are the remnant of Israel, the children of Israel, they will find their escape through Mount Zion and through Jerusalem, which is what happens if you go back to the Olivet Discourse, when he comes on the clouds with his angels with power and great esteem, and they go out to the four corners of the earth and gather up from everywhere all of the people, and then they are taken, as Paul would teach, up into the air to be with Yahuwah forever. And as we find out, in Revelation, and I'm going to say in Isaiah, we find out that we are taken up to Mount Zion and Jerusalem, where we will forever be, even though when we go to it, it's going to be up in the heavenlies, but ultimately it's coming back down to earth, which will be our long-term, our permanent home and foundation. Before I move off of this, I do want to reference or call to attention, though, that there will be an escape, as Yahuwah said, among the remnant whom Yahuwah calls. And I just want to call to remembrance everybody who studies the new writings that Yahushua says no one comes to him except the Father calls them. So really, this is, we can get into issues of election, and that's way too big for this video. But it's pretty clear that the remnant that forms the children of Zion, the church, the ecclesia, are those whom Yahuwah calls, and those of whom he calls who also respond to him in faith, belief, and obedience. Okay, so let's move on to chapter 3. For look, in those days and at that time, when I turn back the captivity of Yehuda and Jerusalem, then I shall gather all the Gentiles and bring them into down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. But let me keep reading. And I shall enter into judgment with them there for my people and my inheritance Israel, whom they have scattered among the Gentiles, that they have divided up. And they have divided up my land, and they have cast lots for my people, and have given a young man for a whore, and sold a girl for wine, and drank it. And also, what are you to me, O Zor and Zion, and all the coasts of Pelesheth? Are you repaying me? And if you are repaying me, I would swiftly and speedily return your reward on your own head. For you have taken my silver and my gold, and brought my treasures into your temples. And the people of Yehuda and the people of Jerusalem you have sold to the sons of Yawan, to remove them from their borders. See, I am stirring them up out of the place to which you have sold them, and I shall return on your own head what you have done, and shall sell your sons and your daughters into the hands of the people of Yehuda, and they shall sell them to the Shebaites and to a nation far off, for Yahuwah has spoken. Proclaim this among the Gentiles. Prepare for battle. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of battle draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Hasten and come, all you Gentiles, and gather together all around, O Yahweh. O Yahweh, let your mighty men come down here. Let the Gentiles be aroused and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there I shall sit to judge all the Gentiles on every side. Put in the sickle, for the harvest has grown ripe. Come, go down, for the winepress is filled, the vats overflow, for their evil is great. Crowds, crowds in the valley of decision, for the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. Sun and moon shall become dark, and stars shall withdraw their brightness. And Yahweh shall roar from Zion and give forth his voice from Jerusalem. And the Shemayim and the earth shall shake, but Yahweh shall be a refuge for his people and a stronghold for the children of Israel. Then you shall know that I am Yahweh your Elohim, dwelling in Zion, my Kodesh mountain. And Jerusalem shall be Kodesh, and foreigners shall not pass through her again. And it shall be in that day that the mountains drip with new wine, and the hills flow with milk, and all the streams of Yehudah shall be flooded with water, and a fountain flow from the house of Yahweh, and water to the Wadi Shittim. Mitzrayim shall become a ruin, and Edom a ruin, a wilderness, because of the violence done to the people of Yehudah, whose innocent blood they shed in the land. But Yehudah shall dwell forever, and Jerusalem to all generations. And I shall avenge their blood, which I have not avenged. And I shall avenge their blood, which I have not avenged, and Yahweh shall be dwelling in Zion. Once again, what a chock-full passage. For look, in those days and at that time when I turned back the captivity of Yehudah and Jerusalem. Well, first of all, let me remind everybody that this is part of what I'm saying, that when we deal with the return of Israel, it's going to be referred to as a delivering from captivity. So here we are. In those days when I turn back the captivity. We see that over and over again. Turn back the captivity. So whatever's going on, this scattering and the dispersion of Yehudah and Jerusalem is considered captivity. And then I shall gather all the Gentiles and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. Well, let me make a comment here that Jehoshaphat was the king sitting in the southern kingdom of Yehudah during this time. You had Ahab as the king to the in the northern kingdoms, but you had Jehoshaphat during, contemporary to Ahab, sitting as the king in the southern kingdom. And Jehoshaphat was generally thought of to be a good king. But there's a reference to this valley of Jehoshaphat where that Yahweh is where Yahweh is going to enter into judgment with the Gentiles. So here we are, the day of Yahweh. So he's going to gather all the Gentiles together. I'm thinking it may not be the exact same situation, but I'm thinking this is the Valley of Armageddon, where they're all gathered together to be judged when Yahushua comes back, riding the white horse with the armies of the Shemayim. And then he's going to enter judgment in there. At that time, is going to enter into judgment with them, the Gentiles, for my people, my inheritance, Israel, whom they have scattered among the Gentiles, and they'd have divided up my land. So so the Gentiles who were used as the arm of retribution by Yahweh and were guilty and complacent in not complacent, but compliant in scattering Israel amongst the Gentiles and in thieving the lands, taking the lands. They're all going to pay, and they will have their day of judgment. And here's some more of what they did. They cast lots for my people and sold and given a young man for a whore and sold a young girl for wine and drank it. So they were doing horrible things. This is what the Gentiles do. So even though they were the arm of retribution, and you could call them a tool of Yahweh, they will pay a heavy price for what they did to Israel in those days. And also, what are you to me, Zor and Zion, and all the coast of Pelesheth, which is the the Philistines? Are you repaying me? And if you are repaying me, I would swiftly and speedily return your reward on your own head. So basically, this sounds like the idea that these folks are trying to be as though they are able to stand up to Yahuwah and and pay Yahweh back for things. Well, Yahweh's basically laughing at them is how I read this. And you have taken my silver and my gold, more crimes against Israel, brought my treasures into your temples. The treasures that were mine and in my temples you've taken out into your temples. And the people of Yehuda and the people of Jerusalem you've sold to the sons of Yawan and removed them far from their borders. So this is the scattering to the Greeks. I mean, those would be the Greeks. And see, I'm stirring them up out of the place of which you have sold them. Okay, so here was the scattering. Here are all the Gentiles scattering people, having scattered, and now going to be judged for having scattered everybody. But now we see a turn in verse 7 where Yahweh is saying, see, I am stirring them up out of the place where you have sold them, which you have sold them, and I shall return on your head what you have done. So he begins to stir up. I think in other places, if we go back to Moses' writing, when we talk about in those days when you begin to feel the move of Yahweh upon you and you begin to turn back to him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. This is the stirring that I think we're talking about that's going to be, it might be happening now. And if it's not happening now, it seems like it's what needs to be happening towards the end of time as the true children of Israel, the true remnant of Israel, what the true members of the real church would call themselves. Just the people who are really repentant and turning towards Yahweh, they will be coming stirred up. They will be getting stirred up in the places where they are living and where they are scattered to. But here's the promise of returning upon the Gentiles what they've done. And they will ultimately sell their sons and their daughters into the hand of the people of Yehuda. So the things that happened to Yehuda are going to be that the Gentiles did to Yehuda is going to be reversed, and Yehuda is going to end up doing it to the Gentiles. And they shall sell the sons of who? And sell your sons and daughters into the hand of the people of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Shebaites, to a nation far off. So it's just basically a return to the Gentiles for what they have done, which is part of the theme here, where maybe I took it out of this one. Nope, ultimately serve Israel. So here's where I'm referring to, the Gentiles get back what they ultimately did to Israel. When it's all said and done, the Gentiles are used against Israel, but ultimately they will be singled out and they will pay for their crimes against Israel, and ultimately they will serve Israel. Constant theme in the scriptures, in the prophets. Okay, verse 9. Proclaim this among the Gentiles. Prepare for battle. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of battle draw near. Let them come up. Who are the mighty men? These are the mighty men of the Gentiles. You think you have mighty men? Draw them together. Pull them all together. Then we go on to say, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Can't tell you how many times I've read that, or not read that, but sung that in the early days of my faith walk. We had the song, let the weak say I am strong, let the poor say I am rich. And I think there might be a passage for that. But in this context, if this is what that song is about, and if that's what this is referencing, we're not talking about the people of Yahweh. We're not talking about the remnant of Yahweh saying let them say I am strong. No. These are the Gentiles. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of battle draw near and let them come up. Let your plowshares, let the Gentiles make their plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the Gentiles make their pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak of the Gentiles say, I am strong. Hasten and come, all you Gentiles, and gather together all around. O Yahweh, let your mighty men come down here. So, when it says, let your mighty men come down here, is that let the Gentile mighty men? Because we see the mighty men reference to the Gentiles up here. And so when we say, oh Yahweh, let your mighty men come down here, because we're also again saying, let the Gentiles be aroused and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there I shall sit to judge all the Gentiles on every side. So there is another time when, I was thinking as I was reading this that there's another account in scriptures. I think it's in 2nd Esdras, where I think that's where I saw the reference to the idea that all of these people, these Gentiles that are drawing near and coming to do battle, know it's a crazy thing to do, to be drawing up in battle against Yahweh, against the Almighty. They know it's crazy, but they're being forced into it. There's an account of what draws them into this, what makes them think they don't believe that they can. I think it's pretty evident in that passage, in that scripture that I was reading. I think that's pretty evident that they don't think they can win, but they have no choice but to try to win. And they're that motivated to win, but they know it's a losing battle. Anyway, let me go on to verse 12. Let the Gentiles be aroused and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there I shall sit to judge all the Gentiles on every side. Put in the sickle in the heart, for the harvest is grown ripe. So here it is, the talk. This will be the end times, the day of Yahweh, because it's time. It's the time of the Gentiles is over, and it's time for the winepress is full. It's time for the day of Yahweh, and because their evil is great. Crowds in the valley of decision. So this is where it's all coming down to. For the day of Yahweh, another reference to that end time day of Yahweh, is near in the valley of decision, which is why I'm thinking that the valley of decision, which is the valley of Jehoshaphat up here, the valley of Jehoshaphat into the valley of down to the valley, and I shall enter judgment. Somewhere up here, we just saw the valley of decision up here too. But this is why I think it's an end time reference, because it's day of the Lord. It's a day of the Lord reference. And the sun, and here's another reason why I think it's the end time reference, because the sun and the moon shall become dark, and the stars shall withdraw their brightness. Day of Yahweh stuff from Revelation and the Olivet Discourse again. And Yahweh shall roar from Zion. Yahweh shall roar from Zion. Where is Zion? Zion, Mount Zion. Where is it right now? Where shall Yahweh roar from? Is he going to roar from the Mount Zion sitting over there in current Jerusalem? Is that where he's going to roar from? Or is he going to roar from the Mount Zion that he's creating up in the heavens, that he's going to draw everybody unto? And that's going to be the New Jerusalem and the new Mount Zion that's coming down. So when he comes at the end time, where's he going to roar from? This little mountain down here in current day Jerusalem, or from Mount Zion in the heavenlies? So that's why I'm pretty confident that this reference to Zion here has to do with the heavenly Mount Zion, the Kodesh mountain in the heavenlies. And from there, he gives forth his voice from Jerusalem, the heavenly Jerusalem that is up there in the heavenlies, not down here on earth in current modern day Jerusalem. And the Shemayim and the earth shall shake when he does that. So from up there, not down here, he's going to roar from Zion and give forth his voice from Jerusalem. With a great shout, he's going to do these things. And the earth and the heavens shall shake, but Yahweh shall be a refuge for his people and a stronghold for the children of Israel. Another reference to the remnant of Israel and how Yahweh, shall be a refuge. And why? Because he's taken them up to the New Jerusalem. He's taken them up to Mount Zion. He's taken them up to where they're going to have the wedding supper of the Lamb and be held until retribution is finished on earth. Then you shall know that I am Yahweh your Elohim, dwelling in Zion, my Kodesh mountain. So do you think he's dwelling down in Mount Zion today, in the Jerusalem of today? Or is he dwelling in Mount Zion of the heavenlies, the Kodesh mountain of the heavenlies, up in the heavenlies, the New Jerusalem in the heavenlies, where he's gone to prepare a place for those who love him? So I'm sure that when he says he's referencing in Zion, he's talking about Zion in the heavenlies, which is going to be his future abode. It's his abode now, but when it comes to earth, he's going to continue to live in Zion, and that's why he's going to be tabernacling with us here on earth. And Jerusalem shall be Kodesh, and foreigners shall not pass through her again. Okay, so he's dwelling in Zion, and Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem, shall be Kodesh, set apart, holy in English translations, and foreigners shall not pass through her again. Well, if you've heard me in some of the other references that I make, we know that there will be foreigners in New Jerusalem. When the New Jerusalem comes down, it's supposed to be, according to Revelation, huge, 1,300 by 1,300 by 1,300, or bigger. You can get some different, from different translations, you'll get some different numbers. But whatever it is, it's a very big place. When you get to Ezekiel and you see the actual city of New Jerusalem, the city. It's not that big. It's smaller. And as I have read and studied, and I should say study, as I read and keep pulling information together, what I've come to believe is that there will be a literal city. And in that city, it will be a gated city. And in that city, the Kodesh only will be. Those who are resurrected will live there. Yahushua will live there. Yahweh will live there. And nothing unclean will come in. No foreigner, nobody with sin, no flesh is coming in that new part of New Jerusalem. But outside of that city, and I've got some math, and I started to do math. I started building spreadsheets from Ezekiel, trying to get the dimensions. Turns out others have already done that kind of work, and I've already done it. And it's a big city, but it's nothing like 1300 by 13. It's nothing like that at all. And actually, the temple appears to be outside of that city. The temple that we're referencing, the tabernacle was a shadow of the temple in heaven. Well, that temple in heaven is coming down here, but will not be inside of this city. It's going to be further down on this big mountain in Zion, if you read Ezekiel. So my point is that I think that in that smaller city, no foreigners are coming in there because they're not clean. Only the clean, only the risen, only the resurrected, those who are living in their resurrection bodies will be in that part of the New Jerusalem. Outside of that, yeah, we're going to have foreigners. We're going to have people, we're going to have foreigners and the Gentiles of the world that are left and that grow into great numbers again, coming and bringing their riches to Jerusalem, to Israel in those days. But that smaller Jerusalem where we're all going to live, where Yahushua and Yahuwah are going to live, I don't believe we're going to see foreigners or uncleanness in there. I think that's where we're going to get the gated cities. Outside of that, we have ungated cities outside of that. That remains to be seen, and there's just evidence. I mean, you have to piece that together. And as I go through these prophets, I'll be showing you evidences for that as we go. Okay, let's keep going. 18. And it shall be in that day that the mountains drip with new wine and the hills flow with milk and all the streams. Okay, so here we are, just promises of the abundance of those days and how wonderful the new land of New Jerusalem, the larger body, and then of course also the smaller city, but everything that comes down is just going to be wonderful. Where Israel is going to reside in the second coming and the second time in the land, their second occupation of the land. It's going to be magnificent and it's going to flow with abundance. And Mitzrayim shall become a ruin, Edom a ruin, a wilderness because of the violence done to the people of Edom. Here's the retribution of Egypt and Edom, Esau, and what's going to happen to them. But Yehuda shall dwell forever and Jerusalem to all generations. So when this comes down, when the new Jerusalem comes down, it's forever. When Yehuda comes back, when we are resurrected, we are dwelling forever. We are living forever in the city that will be forever. Now there will be, in my opinion, there will be some of Israel who will be brought into the land still in the flesh, who are not resurrected and not living in this New Jerusalem up here that I'm speaking of up here, and they will be part of the millennial kingdom up there, but in the flesh. They will die. But they're going to die at greater ages. I mean, health is going to return, and so people are, how does it read that somebody who dies at 100 is going to be considered somebody dying young, or be a child? So we're going to see things like that happening. So we're going to see flesh, and we're going to see things like that also taking place in this land. And not all of those, I believe, will be ultimately living forever in the land, because unless they become part of Jerusalem, unless they also repent and become part of the remnant of Israel, they will be judged just like those of Israel today will be judged if they are not repentant. Okay. And I shall avenge their blood, which I have not avenged, and Yahweh shall be dwelling in Zion. Okay, another reference to him dwelling in Zion, which is not down here, it's up there. And if it's up there now and he's roaring from Zion up there, and that's where he roars from, but it's also a reference here to him dwelling in Zion. That's where he lives. Right now up there, but when it comes down to earth, he will, and we're going to see lots of prophetic utterances where he is going to be living on earth amongst us, which is why we know Zion that's up there is coming down here. And that's how we know that these references to Zion are the New Jerusalem, the Mount Zion, the Kodesh mountain, etc. One last thing before I go here, and I shall avenge their blood, which I have not avenged. I do not know for sure what he means by that, except for that when we read in 2nd Esdras again, we kind of get an idea of what they might be talking about here. Everybody is going to pay for their sin. Unrepentant people who on earth are doing wrong for other people, some of them pay their price here. Some of them pay their price here. And if they pay their price here, they don't have quite the same price to pay when they get to where they're going. They're still going to a bad place, but it's not quite the same price to pay. But if you read 2nd Esdras and you see what happens to the people who did not get judged on earth in the flesh, when they get judged, they're going to be judged in the spirit. And so nobody's ever going to escape their sin. But even the ones that die and you never see them pay on earth for what they have done, and you just wonder, where's the justice? And because they didn't get, they just didn't get judgment here. They will ultimately be judged according to 2nd Esdras, and that's almost worse. You would rather have your judgment here in the flesh. Okay, well that ends our reading for Joel. Hopefully that was helpful. I thank you, and may you be Baruch.